All right, I think we're live. Yeah, looks like we are on. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning, Sergeant Major. Let's see who we have over here. Unverified, made it in the morning. First blood even. My man. I see fish and golf. And I got a couple of Dannies going on here. Excellent. Good start to the morning. All right. And good morning. Okay. Oh, I hear that noise. That's the fan. And I, sorry, I just switched off the call-in number because I don't think I've charged that phone today. So I'll stick that on the charger and maybe I'll throw the call-in number up later in the later this morning in a minute. If I get enough battery on that particular phone, we'll see what we can do. Unverified says, if you happen to be watching this over breakfast on your lanai, check those corners. Corners are important, indeed. All right, so, guys, okay. Let me preface this with, we'll be live on Rumble tomorrow. Just in case. So if you don't see us on YouTube tomorrow, we'll be live on Rumble. That should be a pretty good subtle spoiler as to what we're probably talking about this morning. So, I've got a story that caught my attention this morning, and the story that is probably worth discussing is the story that's going undiscussed. In Ohio, we seem to have a problem where 84 precincts were consolidated to just 3 polling places because of anticipated low turnout. And, the state's office predicted an 8% voter turnout, but turnout was actually closer to 20%. And it looks like, oh, no, I don't want more of your crap, and I don't need to sign into Google for you. Okay. Troubled scanners are issued for some voters in Cuyahoga Falls. So it looks like the story is that these voting machines, they're having an election and the voting machines are non-functional, so they're having people throw their ballots into a bag to be scanned later. There are several reasons that I want to talk to you about this morning, right? I noticed it. I got hit that this story was happening because Carrie Lake was tweeting about it. And of course, now, if you go look at Carrie Lake's Twitter, then it's pretty much just run over with people calling Carrie Lake some kind of monster. Here you go. If you think both Trump and Carrie Lake won Arizona, because I assure you, it's not even intelligible, but just attacking Carrie Lake over losing an election where, guys, let's be clear, Carrie Lake brought suits, and those are still ongoing. And they keep telling you that she lost the suits, but that is not the case. The first time they told you that she lost all her lawsuits, what happened was there were elements of the suit that the judge chose not to allow forward, and there were other elements of the suit that did go forward, and those are still very much pending litigation. To say that she lost those suits is false. And when you look at a situation where you've got voter precincts with high turnouts, with unexpectedly high turnouts, and suddenly the voting machines are non-operational, I might be able to put that down to an unfortunate coincidence, right? An unhappy accident. Shit happens, right? Maybe even it's just a case of you have a couple of people in the office who didn't get their job done, didn't do the maintenance right, and they should be fired for incompetence, right? And that, in a normal, rational, reasonable world, might be the end of it. But the fact of the matter is this: given recent history, it is unreasonable, untenable even, to offer the benefit of the doubt to any of these people. If there appears to be something shady going on with any piece of electoral activity in 2023 going into 2024, it must be assumed that there is something there worth investigating. All right? Means, motive, and opportunity. Right? You have a murder occurs. I always look at the spouse first. And if you can eliminate means, motive, and opportunity, if you can eliminate just one of them pretty reliably, then you start looking for other suspects. That doesn't even mean that you eliminate that suspect. That means that you start examining whether or not there are other suspects which better fit the crime. But you don't say, well, the prime suspect says he didn't do it, so therefore the victim is still alive. Right? That's what you're being asked to believe about voter fraud generally, is that the person who was most probably the culprit denies having committed the crime. So despite there being significant evidence to the contrary of his assertion, his denial is the basis on which we will now operate under the assumption that the victim is still alive, that the victim was not in fact a victim, that the crime did not occur. Right? Now, you're not leaping to the assumption that the prime suspect did not commit the crime. You're skipping straight over that to the crime did not occur. So, now we're looking at this. This should be considered to be a major situation. Right? You have something extremely shady. All of a sudden, on an election day, a state election day in Ohio, the machines just don't work. Let me remind you of an analogous situation and ask you the question. Busted. Evidence proves burst water pipe in Georgia was used as cover for secret vote counting. Now, there is an argument to be made that the claim that it was used as cover for secret vote counting has not been adequately substantiated. Right? Now, to say that it has been utterly disproved is false, because you cannot prove a negative. Right? You cannot prove that X is untrue. You can only prove that the likelihood of the veracity of X has been limited by the elimination of possibilities proved by additional evidence. But you cannot prove a negative. In the case of the burst water pipes in Georgia, not one intelligent person said, that doesn't sound at all convenient given the circumstances. We were immediately skeptical of the claim. And not one person was surprised when it turned out that there was no burst water main. Bit Danny says there was an overflowing toilet, and honestly, I call bullshit on that. Frankly, an overflowing toilet makes a mess in a bathroom and is obvious. It's immediately obvious to anybody what the problem is and where the problem is occurring. That it was reported as a burst water main and the building had to be shut down? No, it was a lie. Danny also points out that the overflowing toilet, which has been attributed as the evidentiary basis for somebody having, mistakenly reporting it as a broken water main, that happened at 9:30 in the morning. And the fact is that the claim that there was a broken water main was in the middle of the night, right? So the broken toilet was hours and hours earlier and took a half hour to clean up. It's not even chronologically proximate to the fallacious claim of the burst water main. So, okay, we got voter machines down in an election, and Kari Lake mentions that on her Twitter, and all of a sudden she's just inundated with, good to see Kari Lake is going for a second loss in Arizona. Okay, Kari Lake says something. No way in hell Arizonans would vote for Kari Lake. Really? Because, even if you assume that, let's not forget, it's not like she lost in a landslide, right? In an election that had a lot of problems, a lot of legitimate problems, which are being taken up by the courts, it was still a narrow victory for her opponent. It's not like nobody showed up to the polls for her, right? It's mind-blowing to me, and what's going to happen is the story will just be swept under the rug. It'll go undiscussed. Now, I was never a big one for the whole voting machines conspiracy. When we first heard about Dominion and we heard about what's-her-face talking about the Kraken and all that, Cameron and I spent a lot of time on this show talking about, guys, something shifty happened. There's something going on that you can't trust. But this ain't it. There ain't going to be a big smoking gun, one machine thing. And if I'm being perfectly honest with you, the more we learn about the problems with the Dominion systems, the specific types of problems that were had, and the very, very good and cogent reasons that nobody should use Dominion systems ever again, the more convinced I am that the whole scandal around the Dominion voting machines was a red herring, that they were intentionally made so suspicious precisely in order to be a needed distraction related to the rest of the actual proved impropriety. And when I say proved impropriety, laws were changed without consultation from legislature. Ballot harvesting, which may be legal in many states, but is not ethical, is not an ethical practice. And what we now know, and this is what I want to spend the rest of the 13 minutes of the show talking about, what we now know to legitimately have been an active conspiracy to defraud the American people and interfere with the course of a United States general election. An actual conspiracy to defraud the American people. It was laid out in the Time article about securing the election, about the shadowy cabal of people working behind the scenes to defraud the American people. They essentially wrote a confession about it. And now we know that the FBI, the then prospective Biden administration, the Democrat National Committee, and all of the major all of the major social media outlets literally conspired to commit the crime of prior restraint and suppression of speech and censorship with the explicit intent and purpose of interfering in the outcome of an election. If any of that sounds familiar, this is the thing that they are charging Donald Trump with having done. And if you haven't read it, it's worth taking a little time. It's only 33 pages, but it is dense legalese. Read the indictment. Read the new indictment, the January 6th indictment, where Donald Trump is being accused of 3 separate conspiracies. Each of the individual conspiracies amounts to an accusation that his free speech is somehow a criminal activity, that accepting legal advice is the same as conspiring to commit a crime. Right? And to be clear, the legal advice was to say words. So his lawyers advised him to freely speak, and he's being charged with crimes. 3 specific extraneous counts of conspiracy. One's conspiracy to defraud, one's conspiracy to interfere, and one's conspiracy to overturn. I don't think they're listed in that order, but it essentially, he's being charged with non-crimes, and the things that there are specific things that they want you to believe he's being charged with, which they, because of the lack of evidence, cannot charge him with. Right? It's called the January 6th indictment, in part because what Jack Smith and Joe Biden want you to believe is that Donald Trump is being indicted for the crime of attempting to conduct an insurrection, and that his part in that, the actual chargeable criminal activity, is the incitement to violence, the incitement to action, the incitement to riot, the incitement to insurrection, that he is guilty of using words which incited people to commit crimes. But they don't allege that in the indictment. They don't allege that because there is no evidence at all to support that claim. They want you to believe that evidence exists and is sufficient to support that claim. But the fact is, that that is not the case, and so they cannot support that claim. Meanwhile, we have the laptop, we have whistleblower testimony with regard to the existence of the laptop, the timeline of the existence of the laptop. We know that the laptop is genuinely Hunter Biden's laptop. We know that the FBI had the laptop for more than 1 year before the New York Post article, which was censored illegally. And I'm going to clarify that in just a second, because there are some private public concerns to discount. And we know that it was done at the direction of Obama administration toadies and sycophants, and that was done by and with the FBI. We now also know, not just from sworn testimony, but from actual communication evidence, that, and the most generous position you can take on this is you can excuse the social media platforms for their part in the crime by arguing that they were coerced by government agents and forced to commit the crime. So, little clarification there. As private entities, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, etc., they do absolutely have the right to decide what is and is not allowed on their platform under the law as it exists currently. Whether or not that's ethical, moral, etc., is another matter. The government and its agents, however, are explicitly forbidden from instructing or forcing a private entity in the usurpation or suppression of speech. Right? So, take a bar, for example. Let's take a public park and a bar. Public park. You have the right to speak and nobody can tell you otherwise. You go there and you say what you want to say. The law makes room for what they call reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions. And in all three of those, it is made explicitly clear that the reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions must be content neutral. So you cannot say, it's okay for you to talk about pro-life issues on Sunday, but not on Monday. Right? You can't say that, okay, you can talk about your anti-life issues. You want to come out here and wave your Planned Parenthood flag in the public park, that's fine, but you're not allowed to have a pro-life sign at the same place and time. So if the restriction is related at all to the content of the message, especially if that content is political in nature, then the government cannot interfere, cannot be involved in that. And what we have now with the emails, the text messages, the Slack chat channels, whistleblower testimony, we have the evidence. It is no longer a theory. We know that the federal government, and this continued to happen after Joe Biden was inaugurated even, but we now know that entities within the federal government, most notably with the FBI, were in communication with the big tech platforms and explicitly threatened to take adverse government actions against these private entities unless these private entities conducted the censorship operations which they went on to conduct. Taking that, plus the extraordinarily suspicious timing of the indictments against Donald Trump. It's every time there's an indictment against Trump, it's the day after a major revelation related to the Biden crime family, bribes that Biden has taken, Hunter flying around the country picking up sacks, or flying around the world picking up bags of cash, all that. It's the Bidens got caught with their hands in the cookie jar. Let's indict Trump. Right? The timing of that is so deeply suspicious that I will go so far as to say we should be indicting for failure. We should be impeaching for failure to perform the duties of their offices every elected official with investigative authority that is not currently conducting investigations into the conspiracy to defraud the American people and to interfere with the 2024 election that is being engaged in almost openly, flagrantly, by Joe Biden, the Democrat National Committee, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, other specific entities within the government, Jack Smith, and I forget the Atlanta DA's name, Millie something, but these people are clearly engaged in a conspiracy to interfere in an upcoming election. They are conducting, not committing. They are Fannie Willis, thank you, Danny. They are actively engaged in the conduct of a conspiracy to commit a major crime. It is current and ongoing. And they should absolutely be wrapped up under RICO. They're engaged in a racketeering campaign. Joe Biden straight up sent Jack Smith to say, "Hey, Donald, nice campaign you got here. Shame if anything were to happen to it." So yeah, absolutely. I am demanding that there be an investigation into the obvious activity of a conspiracy to defraud the American people being conducted by Joe Biden and his associates. It's ongoing, it's visible, and it's hard to ignore. Right? And never, ever forget that Joe Biden, leading up to the 2020 election, on camera, said, and it was one of the most coherent and clearly phrased things that has ever left his face. Right? This bumbling idiot who can barely string a sentence together said very clearly, "We have built the largest and most powerful voter fraud organization in history." And he meant it. And Legion points out it's a uniparty. I still have some faith in some very particular entities. Very, very particular entities. And the majority, but that is not the majority of the Republican Party. I'm with you on that, Legion. I think Kari Lake is rock solid. I think Ted Cruz is maybe slightly less rock solid. I'm actually pretty well impressed with Vivek Ramaswamy. I believe I'd vote for him in 2028. DeSantis has turned out to be a drastic disappointment. And Donald Trump, I mean, who hates world peace and cheap gas? Well, Democrats. Democrats hate world peace and cheap gas. So, y'all be safe out there. I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in it right there. Thanks for watching this morning. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like and share, and leave an actual comment on the video. I love the live chat. I love being engaged with you guys here. Leaving comments on the video in the comment field helps us with the algorithm more. And we've kind of plateaued in the mid 700s on the YouTube side. We're still growing on Rumble, which is great. Make sure that you guys who are watching on Rumble, make sure you hit that share button. But over on the YouTube side, I implore you guys, help me grow it. Hit the like button, hit the share button. If you're not already subscribed, do that. And leave an actual comment in the comments section. Because ultimately, my objective with the YouTube side is until they throw me off, I want to grow the YouTube channel as big as I can and send as many people away from YouTube over to Rumble as I can manage before I finally say something that YouTube just will not forgive. So, we love you, and we will see you tomorrow.